All right. Hey, I'm Ian Signeri. We're doing this on building construction for our class. So we've got 5 types of building construction that we're going to talk about. We've got type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4, and type 5. And they've all got different ratings as far as how they respond in a fire. They're all going to have different tactics a little bit that go with them to a certain extent. So knowing your zone, knowing your area is really important. So I'll try and give an example or two of each type of construction in our area that we already know at our department. So within that, we'll start with type 1, which is a non-combustible, fire resistant. It's not fireproof, it's fire resistant. So it can be 3 to 4 hours of withstanding heat. And that's before we are more concerned about the collapse of the structure, where it's going to start losing its integrity a little bit. An example in our area of a type 1 construction, a perfect example, is actually in our zone right here at our Station 2 where I'm at tonight. It's our ECC building, our communications building for our 911. That's also the meeting area for all the command staff when we have hurricanes that come through here. So that building is good to go. It's a type 1 construction, which means, so what does that mean? It means it's steel. So it's going to be a heavier steel that's going to be encased with some type of a spray for like a fire retardant. And it's also going to involve concrete, which it has a lot of. And with these types of structures, one of the main concerns is loss of integrity of that encased steel or of the concrete over time. So it requires a maintenance to where it's checked up on within our codes in our area to make sure that it always has its integrity intact so that it can last those 3 and 4 hours. This kind of steel can withstand up to like 1200 degrees before it really starts to bend and become a problem for collapse, which is a huge issue in these types of buildings, because they generally are going to have bigger spaces. They're meant for more occupants in them, and they're meant to not collapse. They're the strongest that we've got for any type of construction. So you've got the encased steel, you've got the concrete around it to reinforce it. So the main problem with these types of structures that we want to worry about is the integrity that it has once the interior contents catch fire. So that's a big deal, and they're generally going to have firewalls, and I know our ECC building does. And some of the problems that we can worry about there are the contents of these fires within these compartments of the firewalls is going to produce a lot of heat, and that's trapped heat. So it can, once it catches hold, it can start to spread. But again, with the firewalls and the construction, the way it's built, it's much more difficult. Some of the problems with it are also going to be venting it. Sometimes it's really hard to get roof access, and the windows a lot of times are not going to be openable windows. So these are all factors if you're trying to make entry, if you're trying to have a means of egress. These are things you have to really be aware of. So again, that's our ECC building. Perfect example, it's 1.5 miles from here. Type 2 is a non-combustible. So we have a ton of these in all our zones at Southern Manatee. A perfect one for us is 10-8. And another thing that we did is Chris Craft, which is a boat builder, where they've got a lot of these outbuildings. They're made of steel. Generally, it's going to be a little bit of a lower grade steel, so it's going to be about half the time of a fire resistance that the type 1 is going to be, but usually about the same products and usually same steel. Collapse is more of an issue because these are generally going to be bigger buildings. 10-8 is the building I was referring to. 10-8's our Pierce dealer down here, and they work on all our equipment, and we go into these buildings and you can see them when you pull the engines in. They're just big structures made of steel. So they're going to have a little bit more fire suppression involved with them because generally of the contents that they have in them. For example, Chris Craft, which is that type of structure as well, it's got that MEK in it, methyl something ketone, methyl ethyl ketone, and this stuff's nasty. And we've had several fires there, and it gets really nasty. So they've got fire suppression systems in-house. So a lot of these industrial parks are going to have it, and the contents are what you really have to worry about when these things catch fire. So the contents of these fires, like a Chris Craft, or if you go into like a 10-8 where it's just got crap everywhere. So there's hazards everywhere you step, literally. And if it's smoked out, that can be a problem. And there's oil in there, and there's engines in there, and you're gonna have tires in there. So they can be very nasty fires, and you have half the time before you really have to start worrying about collapse. So these are dangerous structures, and I bet you we have over 100 of them in our district, because we have a lot of industrial parks. So that's a big part of it. Maintenance involves a lot of upkeep, so that the joists and beams and all these things that are made of steel, so that they are ensured that they're maintaining their integrity. And our inspection team here works very diligently with them to try and make sure that stays up to code. So there's a lot of concerns there. And then we've got our type 3. That's our ordinary residential, ordinary construction. So it's residential homes is a big one, where they're going to have the non-combustible structure base of it, which is going to be exterior walls, and the structural components of it are generally going to be, definitely down here in Florida, they're going to be concrete. And then you're going to have the kind of joist, like a prefab joist, generally it was going to go up with the more modern ones, the more modern construction. And these joists up in these areas, we know when you get an attic fire, these hidden voids that type 3s have are a really big concern. So that's a huge issue with these types of structures. And then of course you've got to think about collapse. Generally speaking, the windows are not going to be as hard to get through unless they've hurricane proofed them. So means of egress is a little better. Roof access is a lot easier on these types of structures. Another big thing probably to worry about with these are, we have a lot of homes here that are type 3, but they've been renovated, and they're definitely not all up to code. So you've got roof over roof, making voids, making for burns that we're not seeing until it can almost collapse on us. And you're going to have renovations where they're putting in a new room, but they're not going to have the same type of wall structure that they need for load-bearing walls. So again, collapse is a big issue. They're going to burn much faster. So these are all big concerns with those type of buildings. And I think we all know type 3 construction, that probably 90% of our department lives in one of those, and I'll attach a picture of all these things to go with it. But picture your home, everybody knows my house where I live, picture my house. That is a type 3. So type 4 is going to be the heavy timber. I've racked my brain, and I've asked a bunch of other people too. We don't have any heavy timber here. We live in Florida, we just don't have any. But heavy timber, there's a lot more up north and out west, and it's a large diameter, 8 inches plus of diameter, heavy timber wood, and it's going to be a long-lasting fire, because what actually happens to these is the outside of these beams under contents of fire generally it's going to char the heavy beams. And interestingly enough, what happens when you char the heavy beams, it creates like an insulation around the interior structure of that beam, and it actually cools the inside of it a little bit, and it makes it harder and longer to burn. So I've heard stories that a lot of these fires up north, like old mills, will have some of these types of structures to them, and they burn for days. Like, they could just keep burning. I've never been a part of it. I've only read about it and heard about it, but yeah, they don't have any voids to them, so that's a good part about these heavy structures as well. They could be a problem because of length of time to put out, for sure, And a lot of the contents are what's going to be doing a lot of the burning, and that's going to create a lot of situations where you're going to have a lot of heated rooms, and as always, you have to worry about collapse. Now with these types of places, we're worried about, and I don't know what their codes are up there with these types of constructions, non-modern. They're going to have to stay up to code, obviously, with the joists and the beams and the trusses and all of these parts. And they're all 2-hour rated as well, and they're all larger diameter wood as well. So even the connecting joists and the beams and the trusses, these things are all made of heavy timber. So these things are all heavy duty wood that create that charring effect. So again, I don't have a lot of personal experience on those. I will attach a picture of some examples of that, but in our area, we do not have such a thing. So type 5 construction, that's our stick frame. We've got a lot of, we call them cracker houses down here, where they're just, they're matchsticks. And we know when we pull up to a structure fire, and it's this type of fire, it's a problem. They're gonna go up in a hurry, so we wanna make sure everybody's out of these things. Collapse is imminent, so your time is not on your side with these types of fires. So you have to always be aware of that. Code, being up to code's a big deal. A lot of electrical things that are big issues with us with code, that are things that have to be worked on, and the maintenance and the upkeep of these things. A lot of them just have wires coming in and out of them like crazy. They're generally older. So that's an issue. But now if we look at the modern version of that, the modern construction version, a lot of our 3-4 floor apartment buildings that are going up right now, left and right. We probably have 30 of them going up right now. They're type 5. So these things, someone pulled some strings, got some codes passed, greased some wheels, and all of a sudden we were able to get up these buildings, and within the last couple of years, they've been going up like crazy. There's literally 30 under construction right now. And these are all wood, and they're all 2x4s, 2x6s, and these are filled with voids. The contents, between the contents and then the voids, and now that a lot of these apartment buildings are 3-4 floors high, there's a lot of concerns and a lot of dangers if these floors are up top, and we're fighting fires up there. We're worried about collapse. We're worried about collapsing on our head. So these are big problems, and they're all things that we need to train for, which we do, and attack appropriately. That's why, to sum it up, and I know I went long, but I don't know how I could have done this in 7 minutes. Incident planning is huge, and we do a lot of it with our tacticals, where we go out and we make our tacticals, and we form a plan of how we're going to fight this fire, and we know the problems and the construction types of every one of these buildings, and we've got a tactical on every one of them. We've got them on our computers on the engine, we've got them on our phones, we've got them in tactical books. So we know inside and out these buildings, and as they're being built, we go through there and we tour them, and we understand what's going on with them. Knowledge of incident planning is huge in our business. It's an absolute must. You need to show up for a fire knowing what the hell you're dealing with. So it's very important. So that's all I've got for this presentation. I apologize. I think I doubled it in length. I tried to do a shorter, or the shortened version that I could, and this is what I came up with. Thank you.